The champagne glasses clinked as my parents toasted our engagement. Jessica beamed her diamond ring, catching the light as she squeezed my hand under the table. 2 years together had led to this perfect moment, surrounded by loved ones celebrating our future. Then, she stood for her speech. The fourth glass of champagne, loosening her tongue. To Norman, she giggled, raising her glass for his gold-tier devotion, and she paused, smirking at her bridesmaid's bargain bin equipment. At least he tries hard, right, ladies? Before I continue this story, where are you watching from? Hit subscribe, and let me know in the comments. I never thought my engagement dinner would end with me walking out alone, but looking back, I should have seen the signs. I am Norman, a 32-year-old software engineer at Innovate Tech in Boston. My life changed forever 3 years ago when I attended my college roommate's wedding. That was where I first saw Jessica across the reception hall. She stood out immediately, confident, stylish, with this magnetic laugh that turned heads. When our mutual friend introduced us, I was immediately drawn to her sharp wit and the way she held eye contact just a second longer than necessary. Our first date was at Bordeaux, one of those upscale restaurants where the menu has no prices. I had saved for 2 weeks to afford it, wanting to impress her. Jessica stunned me with her knowledge of wine, discussing vintages and regions with the sommelier like they were old friends. I remember thinking how lucky I was to be sitting across from this sophisticated, beautiful woman. The early days of our relationship were intoxicating. We would spend entire weekends exploring Boston, finding hidden jazz clubs or debating books over coffee. She introduced me to art galleries and fine dining. I showed her the joy of impromptu road trips and Sunday morning pancake competitions. Her spontaneity balanced my planning nature perfectly, or so I thought. Jessica came from a different world than mine. Her family owned a successful real estate development company in Connecticut. Private school education summers in the Hamptons, and connections that opened doors I never knew existed. My own upbringing was solidly middle class. My father worked as a high school math teacher, my mother as a nurse. Everything I had achieved came from my own hard work, putting myself through state college and climbing the tech ladder through long hours and determination. When we decided to move in together after our first anniversary, I was ecstatic. I spent weekends renovating the spare bedroom in my downtown apartment into a home office for her, painting the walls the exact shade of sage green she wanted, and installing custom shelving. She moved in with 12 boxes of designer clothes and a collection of art pieces I pretended to understand. The following year was filled with what I thought was building our life together. We planned trips, including that magical weekend in Florence, where I first thought about proposing. I introduced her to my childhood friends, and she brought me into her social circle of marketing executives and finance professionals. I sometimes felt out of place among her friends, but told myself that was just insecurity talking. Jessica had always been particular about things being just right. Initially, I found her high standards charming. She knew exactly what she wanted and went after it. That same determination that made her successful in her marketing career applied to everything in her life. I started to notice, however, that her constructive criticism about me was becoming more frequent. "Norman, that shirt does nothing for your shoulders. We should upgrade your wardrobe. You really ordered that wine with this meal. That is such a rookie mistake." My ex Alex knew exactly how to handle these social situations. Each comment stung, but I rationalized them away. She was helping me become better, more refined. I wanted to be worthy of her, so I changed. I replaced my comfortable wardrobe with the brands she approved. I took wine appreciation classes. I joined an expensive gym, because she mentioned my softening midsection one too many times. When she made jokes about my performance in the bedroom, I researched ways to improve, desperate to meet her standards. My friend Mark, a therapist by profession, pulled me aside after meeting her at a dinner party. "Norman, do you notice how she speaks to you? That is not how someone talks to a partner they respect." I dismissed his concerns, telling him he was overanalyzing things. Jessica was just honest and direct. Qualities I should appreciate, not criticize. Despite these moments, I was certain she was the one. I spent 3 months planning the perfect proposal, visiting 17 jewelry stores, before finding the ideal 2-carat diamond ring that cost most of my savings. I arranged for a private sunset yacht tour of Boston Harbor, with a violinist playing her favorite song as I got down on one knee. When she said yes, tears streaming down her face, all those doubts vanished. The way she immediately called her parents and posted ring photos on social media validated my choice. She was proud to be mine. We set the wedding date for 6 months later. Her parents generously offered to pay for most of the wedding, planning a 300-person event at one of Boston's historic mansions. I felt a nagging anxiety about keeping up with her family's lifestyle but pushed it aside. This was what Jessica deserved. The best of everything. As wedding planning intensified, so did Jessica's controlling behavior. She fired 2 wedding planners for what seemed like minor issues. She criticized my parents when they suggested some traditional elements that mattered to them. I found myself constantly mediating between Jessica and everyone else, making excuses for her behavior, and assuring people she was just stressed about the wedding. When Jessica insisted on having our formal engagement dinner at Le Chateau, Boston's most exclusive restaurant, I suggested something more intimate, maybe the Italian place where we had our first anniversary. She looked at me like I had suggested eating at a gas station. Norman, this is our engagement. My colleagues and friends expect a certain standard. We cannot disappoint. The guest list grew from immediate family to include Jessica's college friends, business associates, and people I had barely met. The estimated bill made my stomach turn, but I remained silent. This was about making her happy, I told myself. The week before the dinner, Jessica's criticism intensified. She called my mother to suggest a different outfit for the dinner, after seeing a photo of what she planned to wear. She complained that my father's style was embarrassingly academic. I defended them weakly, trying to keep peace while feeling increasingly trapped between my family and my fiancé. Jessica's drinking had increased noticeably during our engagement. What started as an extra glass of wine with dinner had evolved into cocktails before going out, wine during meals, and nightcaps before bed. When I gently mentioned it, she accused me of trying to control her. Just because you cannot handle your liquor does not mean everyone has to abstain, Norman. Stop being so provincial. The day of our engagement dinner, I picked up her designer dress from the dry cleaners, arranged for a limousine, and confirmed all the details with the restaurant. Jessica started drinking champagne while getting ready, saying it was part of the celebration. By the time we left for the restaurant, she had finished nearly half the bottle. Her parents arrived early, her father pulling me aside with a concerned look. Jessica seems to be enjoying herself already, he said carefully. I assured him everything was fine, though my own anxiety was mounting. My best friend Tyler arrived next, giving me a supportive clap on the shoulder. Big night, man. You good, I nodded, forcing a smile that did not reach my eyes. Le Chateau dazzled with crystal chandeliers and white-gloved servers. Our private room accommodated 24 guests, around a long table adorned with arrangements of white roses and silver candelabras. Jessica made an entrance, commanding attention in her red dress, immediately accepting a glass of champagne from a passing server. The first hour progressed pleasantly enough. Wine flowed freely. Jessica's father ordered several bottles of a vintage Bordeaux that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. Jessica became increasingly loud, her laugh more pronounced, her physical affection toward me becoming inappropriate for the formal setting. She kept disappearing to the bathroom, with her bridesmaids returning each time more animated and less inhibited. My father stood to give a heartfelt toast about welcoming Jessica to the family. Halfway through, Jessica interrupted. Yes, we all love each other. More champagne, please. My father sat down, his expression crestfallen. I squeezed his shoulder as I passed to use the restroom, whispering an apology. When I returned, Jessica was holding court, describing my recent promotion, but somehow making it sound inadequate. Norman finally got that senior position. Took him long enough, right? My friend Stephanie's husband made director in half the time. Her bridesmaids exchanged uncomfortable glances, while Stephanie herself looked mortified. As the entrees were served, Jessica's jokes became increasingly personal. She referenced vacations her ex-boyfriends had taken her on, comparing the luxury resorts to the carefully planned trip to Maine I had saved for months to afford. Alex knew how to treat a girl to 5-star everything. Norman is more economical. She laughed, as if sharing an inside joke, but no one joined her. I tried changing the subject several times, asking her father about his recent fishing trip and my mother about her volunteer work. Each time, Jessica would interject with another comparison or criticism disguised as humor. The tension in the room became palpable. I noticed my mother's concerned glances and Tyler's growing anger. As dessert was served, Jessica clinked her glass loudly. Everyone, I want to make a special toast. The room fell silent. My stomach tightened with dread. Jessica stood unsteadily, champagne sloshing slightly over the rim of her glass. Her eyes had that unfocused sheen that came with one too many drinks. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight to celebrate our engagement. She began her words, slightly slurred but coherent. Several people nodded encouragingly, perhaps hoping the speech would take a positive turn. When I met Norman, I never imagined I would be standing here today, she continued, placing her free hand on my shoulder. He has shown me what true dedication looks like. Her tone sounded genuine for a moment, and I felt a flicker of hope that this speech might actually be heartfelt. Then she turned toward her 3 bridesmaids with a smirk that made my blood run cold. To Norman she giggled, raising her glass higher for his gold-tier devotion, and she paused dramatically, looking directly at her bridesmaids' bargain bin equipment. At least he tries hard, right, ladies? The silence that followed was absolute. I heard my mother's sharp intake of breath, saw my father's face darken as he half rose from his chair. Jessica's own father covered his face with his hands while her mother whispered Jessica in horrified disbelief. Her bridesmaids looked everywhere, but at me their embarrassment palpable. Stephanie placed her napkin on the table and stood up, making an excuse to leave. In that suspended moment, I felt as though I were watching the scene from above. The public humiliation burned through me, but beneath that initial pain came a strange clarity. Every dismissive comment, every comparison to her exes, every time she had made me feel inadequate, they all lined up in my mind like evidence I had been too blind to see. My grandfather's words from years ago suddenly echoed in my mind. A man who allows disrespect invites more of it. He had been talking about business dealings, but the wisdom applied perfectly to this moment. This was not a one-time mistake fueled by alcohol. This was the culmination of a pattern, the mask finally slipping completely. A peculiar calm settled over me. The restaurant noises faded to background as I carefully placed my napkin on the table and stood. Jessica was still giggling with one of her bridesmaids, oblivious to the damage she had caused. I walked around the table to where she stood, my footsteps measured and deliberate. The room went silent again as I reached for her left hand. She turned to me, confusion replacing her amusement. I held her gaze steadily as I gently but firmly slid the engagement ring off her finger. The 2-carat diamond caught the light one last time before disappearing into my pocket. "I deserve better than this," I said quietly, my voice steady, despite the hurricane of emotions inside me. "We are done." Jessica's expression transformed from confusion to shock to anger in seconds. "Norman, it was just a joke. You cannot be serious right now." Her voice rose as I turned away. "Norman, come back here, you are making a scene." I walked out without looking back, ignoring her increasingly desperate calls. Tyler followed me out, placing his hand on my shoulder as we reached the street. "You did the right thing, man. That was brutal." He offered to drive me home, but I needed to be alone. The drive home was surreal. My phone buzzed constantly with calls and texts from Jessica, but I turned it off. I felt simultaneously broken and freed, like a prisoner who had just realized his cell door had been unlocked all along. By morning, Jessica had left 37 missed calls and 29 text messages. They ranged from furious accusations, "You humiliated ME in front of everyone," to tearful apologies. "Baby, please, I was drunk, I did not mean it," to manipulative guilt trips. "If you ever loved me, you will talk to me." I read them all but responded to none. That day, I called a locksmith to change the locks on my apartment. Jessica still had a key, and I knew her well enough to anticipate an uninvited visit. I also took a week off work, explaining to my sympathetic manager that my engagement had ended dramatically, and I needed time to regroup. Jessica's parents called to apologize profusely for their daughter's behavior. Her father sounded defeated when he said, "We raised her better than this. I am truly sorry, Norman." I thanked him for his kindness over the years and wished him well. True to form, Jessica showed up at my workplace the following week, creating a scene in the lobby that required security intervention. My colleagues were supportive, especially after word spread about what had happened at the engagement dinner. Several of Jessica's friends reached out to me privately, sharing stories of her similar behavior in the past. Information I wished I had known earlier. I maintained complete no contact, despite her escalating attempts to reach me. She left gifts at my door, sent mutual friends to plead her case, and even contacted my parents. I remained firm in my decision, finally recognizing that her toxic presence in my life had been slowly eroding my self-worth. 2 weeks after the engagement dinner, a new message appeared on my phone. Jessica had sent an explicit video of herself with a text. "See how much I want you. This is all yours if you come back." The manipulation was so transparent, it almost made me laugh. This was her latest attempt to control me using sexuality when apologies failed. Without hesitation, I forwarded the video back to her with a simple message. "This is who you are. I do not want any part of it." The panicked calls began immediately. "You cannot share that video with anyone, I will sue you." Her threats revealed what she thought I might do. Exactly what she would have done in my position. I had no intention of sharing her private video. I simply wanted her to see how low she had stooped. Her legal threats disappeared when she realized I had only sent it back to her. The weeks following our broken engagement were among the hardest of my life. I alternated between questioning my worth and feeling angry at myself for ignoring so many warning signs. The embarrassment lingered. I imagined everyone from that dinner discussing my humiliation, pitying the man with bargain bin equipment who finally grew a spine. I started seeing a therapist who specialized in relationship trauma. Dr. Winters helped me recognize my people-pleasing tendencies and how Jessica had exploited them. "You gave away your power in small increments," she explained, until she felt entitled to all of it. Slowly, I reconnected with friends I had neglected during my relationship with Jessica. They welcomed me back without judgment, and their genuine enjoyment of my company helped rebuild my confidence. My friend Mark, the therapist who had tried to warn me, never once said "I told you so." Instead, he invited me on weekend hiking trips that cleared my mind and strengthened my body. 3 months after the engagement ended, I found a new apartment across town. Packing up reminded me of how much I had compromised. The sage green office walls, the expensive kitchen gadgets Jessica had insisted on, but never used the uncomfortable designer couch that looked perfect but felt awful. My new place reflected my actual tastes. Comfortable furniture walls lined with bookshelves and a dedicated gaming corner I had always wanted, but Jessica had vetoed as childish. 6 months after the dinner, I received a handwritten letter from Jessica. Unlike her previous attempts at contact, this one acknowledged her alcohol problem and took responsibility for her behavior without asking for reconciliation. "I have started a rehabilitation program," she wrote. "Not to win you back, but because I finally see what I have become." I chose not to respond but found myself wishing her well in her recovery journey. My confidence grew as I established and maintained boundaries in all areas of my life. I declined projects that required unreasonable hours, spoke up when friends made plans that did not interest me, and stopped apologizing for my preferences and opinions. The more authentic I became, the more I attracted people who appreciated the real Norman. When the Seattle job offer came around again, the same opportunity I had declined to stay with Jessica, I accepted without hesitation. The company arranged for my relocation, and I found myself excited about the fresh start in a new city. Boston held too many memories, both good and painful. Seattle welcomed me with its unique energy and stunning landscapes. I discovered a passion for mountain hiking, spending weekends exploring trails with breathtaking views that reminded me how big the world was beyond my previous relationship bubble. The physical challenges of difficult hikes mirrored my emotional journey. Tough stretches that led to magnificent vistas worth every step. At a tech conference downtown, I ran into Madeline, an old college acquaintance who had moved to Seattle years earlier. We started with coffee catch-ups that evolved into dinner conversations that lasted for hours. What struck me most about Madeline was how comfortable I felt being myself around her. I did not need to monitor my words or impress her with knowledge about things that did not interest me. Our friendship grew naturally, without pressure or expectations. She laughed genuinely at my jokes, respected my opinions even when she disagreed, and never made comparisons that diminished me. 6 months into our friendship, when our relationship began turning romantic, I recognized that this connection was built on something I had never experienced with Jessica: mutual respect. Exactly 1 year after the engagement dinner disaster, I found myself sitting on a bench overlooking Puget Sound, reflecting on how dramatically my life had changed. The humiliation that once felt like the worst moment of my life had actually saved me from a lifetime of slow-drip emotional abuse. The pain had been necessary. Without it, I might never have found the strength to leave. That night, Jessica texted me one last time, "I hope you have found happiness, Norman. I am still working on mine." This message, unlike all her previous ones, sought nothing from me. I replied simply, "I wish you healing," and then removed her number from my contacts. The exchange felt like the final period at the end of a difficult chapter. The greatest lesson I learned from my relationship with Jessica was that love without respect is not love at all. It is possession. True connection cannot exist where one person constantly diminishes the other. I had confused being needed with being valued, sacrifice with partnership, criticism with growth. Today I approach relationships differently. I no longer try to prove my worth through endless accommodation. Instead, I seek genuine partnership where both people can be authentically themselves. The freedom that comes from self-acceptance has transformed not just my romantic life, but all my relationships. Sometimes the most painful moments turn out to be doorways to our best lives. Had Jessica not publicly humiliated me, I might be married to her now, living a life of quiet desperation, constantly trying to measure up to impossible standards. Instead, that moment of clarity led me to rebuild my life on a foundation of self-respect and authentic connection. Have you ever experienced a painful moment that ultimately led to positive change in your life? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences. Remember, sometimes walking away is not giving up. It is choosing yourself. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the courage to create boundaries that protect your worth.